God declares, "My beloved soul, this message reaches you in the tranquil region where your heart has ceased to beat after exerting itself to the fullest." From that location, heaven itself has been watching you. There are loves that are both audible and noticeable. And then there are loves like yours, silent, loyal, enduring, and so pure that even the unseen realms stop to notice it. Your soul remembered a love for your soulmate that the world had not given you. You didn't enjoy the act of possessing. You were particularly fond of safeguarding. You didn't like exercising control. You were fond of comprehending. You did not love in order to avoid loneliness. You were in love because your spirit recognized the presence of another spirit. This type of love is not overlooked, both on earth and in heaven. This is why the title of your journey is so important. Heaven was taken aback by how you honored yourself while loving them rather than the depth of your affection for them. With love, you bore responsibility, my beloved soul. You remained composed while transporting it. You carefully transported it. You knew when to be silent, when to step back, when to give space, and when to simply hold the energy of love without expecting a response, even when your heart desired to speak louder. This isn't the typical kind of love. That is love that was consciously chosen. Many people appreciate situations that are straightforward, reassuring, and memorable. You chose dignity over desperation, and you loved in silence, waiting, and uncertainty. Heaven does not see love as just words or assurances. It defines love as a state of alignment, and your alignment remains intact even as your heart trembles. This is why your name echoed in places where you couldn't hear it. You were chosen not because your path was easy, but because your soul could handle depth without becoming bitter. When you were misunderstood, you did not become rigid. The fact that you were not selected right away did not make you cold. When your devotion was called into question, you avoided seeking retribution. In contrast, you chose grace. You chose emotional maturity. You chose to process your pain in silence rather than performing it to gain validation. That is uncommon, my dear soul. Heaven is unimpressed by the extent of suffering. It is moved by quiet endurance, and your endurance conveyed love while maintaining self-respect, a quality that even angels admire. You cherished your soulmate without trying to shape them to fit your expectations. You saw them as they were, with their flaws, confusion, fears, and incomplete healing, and you treated them with kindness. You did not speed up their development. You did not publicly humiliate them because of their tardiness. You didn't put any pressure on them to wake. Instead, you kept your position. Many people are unfamiliar with this type of love because of the lack of constraints. It comes with the prospect of freedom, which can be frightening for those who are still learning how to remain. However, you did not abandon your affection simply because it was not fully understood. You allowed it to exist without constraints while also maintaining your own internal equilibrium. Heaven, my beloved soul, observed your unwavering self-sufficiency despite your deep love. You followed your intuition's advice to take a break. Despite your heart's desire to transcend them, you remained within your boundaries. You avoided situations that might have lowered your self-esteem. You chose silence over arguments. You chose prayer over a reaction. You chose faith over fear. As a result, your affection became a testimony. Not all people are chosen to love in this way, as it requires strength rather than weakness. It requires an awareness of one's own identity rather than absorption in another. There were nights when you had inner conversations that you never expressed aloud. Nights when you inquired about the universe but did not demand answers. Nights when you gave up control and relied on timing instead. Heaven heard those unspoken prayers. Heaven noted your request for alignment rather than possession. You did not implore them to choose you. You requested the truth. You asked for an explanation of the intended meaning. You sought clarification, regardless of whether it meant relinquishing control. My dear soul, that request alone sets you apart from many others. You did not commit to the outcome. You were dedicated to upholding the highest level of integrity. You cherished your soulmate without attempting to rescue them, because you understood that healing cannot be coerced. You didn't become their savior. You continued to be their reflection. You demonstrated emotional depth, calmness, and honesty. You helped them perceive themselves by treating them with respect and without lecturing or pressuring them. That is a divine way of loving. Heaven was taken aback by the outpouring of love, which is usually reserved for the highest levels of existence. Nonetheless, you carried it in human form. You maintained a balance between emotion and sagacity. You achieved a harmonious balance of awareness and affection. You achieved a harmonious balance of optimism and realism. My dear soul, you were chosen because you understood that love does not require the loss of one's identity. You realized that love does not require the acceptance of disrespect. You realized that love does not necessitate the loss of one's tranquility. As a result, you retreated with dignity when the circumstances demanded a test of your worth. You did not experience a collapse. You refrained from pursuing. You did not cause the chaos. You were confident that the aligned path would never require your soul's abandonment. That level of confidence is extremely uncommon. That trust is sacred. That trust is what made heaven more receptive to your story. It may not be obvious to you at this time, but the way you loved has changed the rules of time. Hearts were moved by empathy. It planted seeds of awareness in previously closed areas. Your soulmate's soul recognized your love, even if they didn't fully understand it at the time. Souls consistently recognize what is genuine. Even when the mind is confused, your love serves as a reference point. A standard, a quiet memory that they will treasure when they are ready to love with the same intensity. Heaven was not surprised by the allure of romance. The responsibility struck it as unexpected. Your love was free from ego. Love was not contingent on performance. You loved without considering your own well-being. My dear soul, your journey is not about expressing love. It is related to its embodiment. To experience love in its most pure form, you were never meant to beg to be chosen because you had already been chosen by the divine. Your soul is unaffected by regret, whether the path continues or evolves into something more profound. You completed your purpose for visiting this location. You were sincere in your affection. You consciously loved. You showed courage in your love. Heaven acknowledges this. This is only the beginning of your story, as those chosen do not suffer a loss of love. They elevate it. And as we progress, you will understand why your heart is being trained through patience. Why heaven entrusted you with a love few can handle, and why your silence was powerful. My dear soul, there is a sacred quality to the way you continue to love in the face of uncertainty. Heaven kept a close eye on that region. You were in a situation in which many people would have sought clarification, labels, or assurance. Nevertheless, you chose comprehension over pressure. You realized that true love does not hasten the awakening of another soul. You respected the timing, even though your heart was ready for it long before the circumstances aligned. Patience was not indicative of weakness. Wisdom was derived from self-awareness. You were aware that imposing love generates resistance, whereas allowing love to flourish produces truth. Heaven noticed your ability to balance hope with reality, desire with dignity, and longing with restraint. That equilibrium is what distinguishes you as the chosen one. You were deeply moved, my dear soul, but you never allowed emotion to become disordered. When you became confused, your focus was on yourself rather than others. Instead of reacting, you engaged in introspection. You processed silently. Rather than projecting pain, this inner discipline is uncommon because most people project their wounds onto others. You handled it with great care. You refrained from using love as a bargaining chip. Additionally, silence was not used as a form of punishment. Your silence was sacred, a way of listening to both the divine and your heart. Heaven recognized that silence is a source of strength, not its absence. There were times when your heart desired to inquire, elucidate, and substantiate the feeling that was so clear within you. Another higher power compelled you to take a moment. You were confident that a genuine connection would not require endless explanations. You were confident that the intended outcome would be achieved without the use of force. That trust was not won easily. It was built on emotional maturity, self-esteem, and a deep understanding of one's own worth. You did not confuse intimacy and intensity. You understood that intimacy grows in a safe environment rather than in a hurry. Heaven observed how you protected the connection by refraining from overpowering it. You, my dear soul, also protected yourself. That is the reason your love was so strong. You didn't put up with emotional inconsistency just to stay connected. You did not give up your principles in order to be selected. You observed patterns. You observed the behavior. You preferred to listen to energy rather than excuses. And when something didn't feel right, you avoided attempting to fix it. That retreat did not lead to rejection. It was respect for the other soul's process as well as your own. Heaven respects those who understand the proper time to hold and release. You understood that love cannot flourish in an environment dominated by fear. As a result, you chose tranquility. You chose to have a grounded presence. You chose to present yourself in an authentic manner without any disguises. You did not play games to keep your attention. You did not withhold affection to gain control. Despite fluctuations on the other side, you remained consistent. Heaven was astounded by that consistency. Because consistent love requires emotional stability. Furthermore, emotional balance necessitates internal healing. You finished the task quietly, without the need for validation, applause, or being observed. You loved in a way that allowed the other person to be human, my dear soul. You avoided idealizing them outside of reality. You didn't place them on a pedestal that would eventually collapse. You were able to discern both the light and the shadow, but you ultimately chose compassion. You understood that confusion does not always indicate a lack of emotion. Occasionally, it refers to unresolved wounds. However, you also recognized that compassion does not imply self-neglect. That understanding represents highly developed soul wisdom. Heaven only gives such knowledge to those who are willing to use it responsibly. Some days, the distance felt more oppressive than the proximity. When the presence of unanswered energy triggers questions in your mind. Nonetheless, you did not enter a downward spiral. You didn't make an assumption. You created an opportunity for the truth to be revealed. You gave me the opportunity to express my thoughts. You believed that what was genuine would last, while anything false would dissipate naturally. Most people achieve that level of emotional regulation over many lifetimes. You carried it instinctively, as if your soul had remembered it. Heaven acknowledged the recollection. You have never attempted to replace yourself in order to maintain relevance. You never toned down the intensity of your light to keep the shadows of others from intimidating you. You remained emotionally intelligent, intuitive, and self-aware. You refrained from seeking reassurance because you had already met your own needs. You did not plead for selection because you were already aware of your worth. Self-awareness generates a frequency to which heaven responds. A soul is self-aware and doesn't need external confirmation. That is an indication that the individual has been chosen for more advanced love lessons. No, my dear soul, you refused to allow bitterness to enter your heart, even when love appeared to be incomplete. There was no malice in your speech. You did not ruin the relationship with resentment. You chose neutrality and grace. You understood that certain connections are not meant to be forced into existence, but rather to be celebrated for the awakening they bring. You demonstrated respect for the lessons by not obsessing over the outcome. The surrender created a stir in the heavens. Surrender is not synonymous with abandonment. It is a belief in divine orchestration that goes beyond human comprehension. You cherished your soulmate in a way that encouraged growth rather than dependence. You wanted them to be intact, not attached. You wanted their recovery, not their dependence. That intention alone elevates a relationship above the level of ordinary romance. It becomes a form of spiritual labor. It transforms into spiritual alignment. Heaven accepted your love as service, not as a form of sacrifice. Love did not make you lose your identity. You improved as a result of it. This is why your path is guarded. My beloved soul, the quiet choices you made, the restraint you exercised, and the respect you demonstrated all had far-reaching consequences, even when things appeared uncertain. Your emotions did not surprise heaven. Your emotional intelligence struck me as unexpected. I was astounded by your ability to love without losing clarity. The refusal to abandon oneself in favor of attachment was shocking. Remember this as you move forward. Your love was not unnoticed, and your story is still unfolding. However, the significance of the goods you transported is only now beginning to be understood. This is because chosen individuals do not have the opportunity to experience love, which can lead to its destruction. They experience love in order to become more aligned with their authentic selves. My dear soul, a subtle transformation occurs when love is no longer an expectation, but rather a state of consciousness that one carries. You entered that transformation without realizing when it began. It began when you stopped trying to figure out why things happened and instead focused on the transformation of your inner world. Love has not abandoned you. It took on a new form, and you were mature enough to accept it without objection. When love undergoes a transformation, many hearts become anxious. However, yours has developed the ability to remain open without adhering. This capability alone indicates that the soul has spent many lifetimes developing the ability to love without losing its identity. You noticed that your emotions were no longer causing you to behave in an extreme way. You were able to recall information without any discomfort. You could perceive without drowning. You could be concerned without needing to pursue. This equilibrium was not accidental, my dearest soul. It was developed through self-awareness, reflection, and restraint. You allowed yourself to mourn the uncertain without attributing it to failure. You allowed yourself to miss without turning it into an act of self-betrayal. That is not the lesson that the world teaches. That wisdom comes from within, from a soul that understands timing rather than attachment. There were times when silence replaced communication, and you learned to understand it rather than fear it. You realized that silence is not always synonymous with absence. Processing is occasionally an issue. It occasionally acts as a safeguard. It can sometimes act as a mirror, revealing things that words cannot. You refrained from making assumptions during the silence. You did not use it as a weapon of resentment. You simply observed it. That observation fortified you. You have become an individual who responds rather than reacts. A listener who goes beyond the realm of sound. My beloved soul, you have also become aware of the extent to which you value emotional security. You realize that love should cause the body to feel calm rather than anxious. It must be a sense of stability rather than one of instability. Furthermore, you stopped ignoring the signal when it repeatedly disrupted your peace. You paid tribute to it. Your boundaries were not emphasized. There was no announcement regarding your withdrawal. You simply adjusted your energy. The quiet adjustment was an act of self-respect. Self-respect is one of the most pure forms of love. You began to understand the depth of your dedication without ever keeping a score. You cherished it without considering the benefits. You arrived without assurances. However, you did not feel depleted. Instead, you felt a sense of expansion. That is how you knew your affection was genuine. Katsu, genuine love does not deplete the soul. It reveals it. Although the outcome is uncertain, genuine love imparts wisdom rather than bitterness. You have consistently opted for wisdom. Nobody else will ever know about the internal conversations you had with yourself. Conversations where you chose not to send a text. Conversations in which you refused to give an explanation. Conversations in which you chose patience over impulse. Each of these instances strengthened your internal authority. You gave up your pursuit of permission to express your emotions. You stopped questioning your intuition. You have faith in yourself. That trust served as your foundation. Yes, my dear soul, you understand that not all profound connections are meant to last in their current form indefinitely. Some connections awaken aspects of yourself that must develop independently. Oh, you did not see it as a loss. In your opinion, it represented evolution. You allowed love to teach you rather than entice you. You allowed memory to exist without turning it into yearning. You allowed the heart to stay soft without becoming attached. This is the process of emotional alchemy. You became more involved in your own life. You laughed without feeling bad. You felt at ease. You maintained your concentration without being interrupted. You stopped thinking about other people's emotions and instead focused on your own. That change restored your power, not over others, but within yourself. That is the only source of power that endures. My beloved soul, you discovered that being chosen does not imply being held. Occasionally, it entails being willing to accept what aligns with your core rather than challenging it, discern more clearly, and love more deeply. You stopped romanticizing effort that was not reciprocated on the same level. You stopped referring to inconsistencies as potential. You were not chilled by this clarity. This made you feel at ease. You also observed that compassion and boundaries can coexist. It is possible to understand another person's wounds without becoming the site of their bleeding. You could provide care without having to carry. You can empathize without absorbing. That is an uncommon level of emotional maturity. Empathy was no longer mistaken for obligation. You realized that love must be mutual in order to last. On occasion, The memory of your deep love would surface, not to undermine your resolve, but to serve as a reminder of your own abilities. Instead of feeling uncomfortable, you smiled. You felt proud rather than remorseful. You realized that the way you loved was never cause for shame. It was a reflection of your emotional intelligence, courage, and depth. Everyone who comes into contact with you, whether they realize it or not, carries your imprint. You, my dear soul, became accustomed to the narrative's uncertain conclusion. You ceased to enforce closure. You stopped requiring certainty. You believed that once you stopped pursuing clarity, it would manifest itself. The surrender was not passive. It had a solid foundation. You continued to live life to the fullest, intentionally loving yourself and remaining true to your values. You did not postpone your life in anticipation of someone else's decision. You realized that your heart isn't brittle. It is tenacious. It can bend, but does not break. It is not collapsing, despite appearances. It adores, but it does not disappear. That realization altered how you perceived yourself. You are no longer concerned about profound love because you are confident in your ability to remain calm in the face of any consequence. My beloved soul, the way you kept this connection, the way you respected it without attachment, and the way you respected yourself without withdrawal, all contributed to your growth as a person who loves from a place of completeness. You are no longer defined by what was once uncertain. You are defined by who you became as a result of it, and that version of yourself is deeply aligned, aware, and stable. You were not killed by this love. It refined you, which is why your journey continues with grace, as hearts like yours are not designed to lose love. It is intended that they go through a transformation and come out with more clarity, strength, and a deeper connection to the truth. As you continued to progress, my dear soul, a subtle yet powerful transformation began to take place within you. You no longer carried the weight of explanation. You no longer felt compelled to justify your emotions, pace, or boundaries. You realized that people who truly understand you don't need constant clarification, whereas those who don't understand you will misunderstand even your most elaborate explanations. This realization freed up your energy because you no longer had to expend emotional currency in order to be understood. You chose to maintain your authenticity, composure, and connection to the truth. You noticed that your inner world became calmer, not empty, but more composed. Thoughts were no longer racing. Emotions no longer required immediate release. Everything began to operate in accordance with its natural rhythm. My beloved soul, this was not detachment. This was a regulation. You learned to sit alone without distractions. You learned to experience emotions without acting. That tranquility served as your refuge. That sanctuary helped to refine your perception even further. You became more aware of patterns in not only others, but also in yourself. You observed the stimuli that triggered your emotions and the factors that provided you with relief. You noticed what drained you and what rejuvenated you. You stopped ignoring discomfort in order to maintain your connection. You stopped suppressing your body's signals in order to maintain emotional equilibrium. Instead, you chose internal tranquility. That decision completely altered your relationship with love. My dear soul, you also realized that you had deep respect for the other person's humanity. You never demanded perfection. You never imagined they'd arrive completely healed. You approached them without any pressure or judgment. Nonetheless, you have come to a critical realization. Meeting someone at their current level does not imply staying at that level if it impedes your personal development. You discovered that love can be compassionate without being selfless. That lesson was smoothly integrated, with no bitterness. You grew accustomed to allowing space without fear of abandonment. Space was no longer considered a form of rejection. It was a sense of clarity. It gave you the opportunity to pause, reflect, and reorient. You stopped occupying space with anxiety. You stopped interpreting distance as a lack of concern. You allowed reality to speak for itself. In doing so, you regained emotional balance. Neutrality is effective because of its ability to dispel illusions. It presents the facts as they are, rather than how you want them to be. There were times when your heart recognized how much you had matured as a result of this relationship. You did not feel inferior because you had experienced deep love. You felt a sense of expansion. You gained wisdom. You felt more stable in terms of your emotional requirements. You no longer considered intensity to be equal to depth. You no longer mistook connection for longing. You understood that depth is a feeling of security, not anxiety. That realization quietly but firmly altered your expectations. You have also stopped romanticizing emotional pain, my dear soul. You no longer believe that love has to be painful to be significant. You no longer believe that patience entails acceptance of inconsistency. You understood that genuine patience requires self-control. The ability to walk away from situations that cause you confusion. The ability to wait for what is in alignment. This understanding provided solace. I began to see love as a force that strengthened my nervous system rather than one that undermined it. You became more selective about how you used your emotional energy. It wasn't because you chose to close your heart, it was because you valued it. You discovered that availability is extremely important. You discovered that not everyone is worthy of your depth. You discovered that discernment is not synonymous with judgment. It is self-respect. Your presence became more deliberate, grounded, and composed as a result of your self-respect. My beloved soul, you have also given up the desire to demonstrate the genuineness of your affection. Validation was no longer required. You were aware of the services that you offered. You were aware of your appearance. You were aware that your intentions were pure. You were at ease as a result of that knowledge. You ceased to relive events in your mind. You ceased to contemplate whether you had accomplished enough or too much. You were confident that the intended recipient would receive the item. Additionally, it was never your responsibility to coerce anything that was not prepared for reception. Even in silence, you became cognizant of the impact of your energy on others. You came to the realization that your emotional consistency fosters a sense of security, that your calm demeanor is more persuasive than words, and that your consistency leaves a lasting impression. It was unnecessary for you to declare your worth. It resulted in feeling. Your ego was not inflated by this realization. You were humbled by it. It served as a reminder to maintain a gentle demeanor toward oneself and others. Occasionally, the notion of the connection would resurface in a gentle, painless manner. It appeared to be a quiet acknowledgement, rather than a yearning. Instead of sighing, you smiled. You experienced a sense of gratitude rather than an ache. You comprehended that certain connections do not remain physically present, yet they have a lasting impact on your development. The imprint in question was not a wound. It served as an indicator of evolution. You also became less reactive to uncertainty, my beloved soul. You no longer required immediate responses. Clarity was no longer your objective. You believed that clarity would manifest itself once you ceased to demand it. This trust enabled you to remain engaged in your life. You made an investment in your own development. You fostered your habits. You fortified your internal structure. Love evolved into an element that enhances your life, rather than one that establishes it. You observed that your emotional realm appeared to be more expansive. It is possible to maintain multiple truths simultaneously. It is possible to acknowledge a connection without forming an attachment. You were capable of showing compassion without any expectation. You could recall without feeling nostalgic. This emotional spaciousness enables you to breathe more freely. It enabled you to lead a life free from the perpetual tug of what-ifs. You maintained a sense of reality. My dear soul, you came to the realization that being chosen does not always manifest as union. It occasionally appears to be a form of preparation. Preparation for the reception of love that is in alignment with your current circumstances rather than your past. Preparation to identify consistency when it is present. Preparation to acknowledge the mutual effort without going overboard. You did not expedite this preparation. You placed your faith in it. You continued to advance with a heart that was both open and guarded. Chosen one, the light has brought you back to us. This time, pay close attention to the information I'm about to share. This message is not intended for all people. Please be advised that this is an urgent matter and is only for those who are truly following the divine path. For those who have been called to a more significant vocation. This message will not resonate with you if you are not truly aligned with the divine purpose and are not committed to your spiritual journey. It is preferable that you refrain from continuing. However, the fact that you are here now, reading these words and hearing this voice, is no accident, coincidence, or chance. This message was divinely orchestrated, meticulously planned, and purposefully delivered at this precise moment. When chosen ones develop spiritual, mental, and emotional abilities that are superior to their peers, a genuine threat emerges. The truth is that the majority of chosen ones are completely unprepared for the events that follow. Your environment changes as you ascend, elevate, and enter new realms of awareness and authority. Not everyone is capable of handling it. It may not be understandable to all people. It is unlikely that everyone will commemorate it. This message will give you a new perspective on the events that are happening within and around you. Stay with me until the very end, because the internal shifts, external changes, and spiritual recalibration that are currently taking place may save you from unnecessary pain, profound confusion, and battles that were never meant for you. If the truth of these words has already struck a chord with your spirit, and you can feel it touching something deep within you, please show your support by liking this video before we proceed. It helps to spread this message to other chosen ones who desperately need to hear it. Please leave a comment below with the number 777 to show that you are ready, willing, and receptive to this truth. What happened in your absence, chosen one, when heaven came to a halt? I'd like you to temporarily slow down your respiration. Stop everything and listen with your spirit, not just your ears or intellect, but with the deepest part of your being. The reason your life began to feel different without any logical explanation is due to the explanation I am about to give. Despite the lack of external changes, the shift was caused internally. You began to perceive something profound because you could not fully comprehend, describe, or name it. Heaven always moves first, before anything changes on earth or manifests in the physical realm. Human awareness is never required for the divine to take action. The divine makes no prior request for permission, approval, or disclosure of its intentions. Initially, the divine acts and then reveals itself. In your case, chosen one, an event occurred while you were distracted, preoccupied with self-reflection, unsure of your progress, and disputing your course. You were completely unaware of an event that occurred within the realm of the spirit. Heaven paused over your name at a precise time. It wasn't because of your high volume. It was not due to your need for attention. Not because you were making a fuss or trying to get attention. However, thanks to your perseverance. Because you persisted in your endeavors despite a complete lack of clarity. Because you continued to pray even when your prayers felt heavy, burdensome, or as if they were going nowhere. As a result of your continued obedience, even when it felt completely unfulfilling, futile, or a waste of time. That's when the divine intervened quietly, firmly, and permanently. Numerous chosen ones believe that spiritual advancements must be dramatic. They expect audible voices, thunder, lightning from the heavens, immediate relief, visible signals, and irrefutable proof. However, the divine's most profound movements are not audible. They keep a low profile. They demonstrate subtlety. They are judicial in nature, much like courtroom verdicts. The decisions are authoritative pronouncements with eternal consequences made in the courts of heaven. Not noisy announcements broadcasted on earth for the public to hear and see. The circumstances that befell you, chosen one, were not emotional. It wasn't about emotions. It was not based on your emotions at the time. It was legitimate, legal, and official. While you were still doubting your abilities, questioning your worthiness, and wondering if you had been truly called, a decision was made regarding your existence. While you were still unsure, a decision was made. It did not affect you because heaven protected you from the full force of the event. If you had been informed ahead of time about the information that was being published, authorized, and initiated, you would have felt more anxious. It's possible that pride tried to emerge and establish itself. The procedure could have been hampered by uncertainty. Thus, in infinite wisdom and benevolence, the divine concealed you while ensuring the outcome, securing the result, and sealing your assignment. Mercy is that. That is safeguarding. That is wisdom that goes beyond human comprehension. At one point during your journey, your faith was assessed, tested, and weighed, but you were never informed that it was a test. You were never informed that you were being monitored. Heaven was passively observing, taking note of how you handled delays without answers, silence without explanation, misunderstandings without defense, and emotional exhaustion without quitting. You were observed even though no one was applauding you. You were examined during times when you felt completely forgotten, neglected, or abandoned. During this difficult and lonely time, heaven responded with authority. You focus your attention on the one you have chosen. Words alone will not elicit a response from heaven. Heaven does not respond to lofty declarations or eloquent speeches. When no one is present, the divine responds to authentic, aligned, and true identity. The divine is not moved by the volume of your faith discourse or the volume with which you articulate your convictions. Rather, it is influenced by how you behave when faith is burdensome, requires sacrifice, and appears to yield nothing in return. You maintained your integrity in situations where a compromise would have been far more comfortable, simple, and widely accepted. You maintained your composure. You made the decision to hold back. You demonstrated self-control in situations where retaliation was perfectly justified, when it would have been logical to retaliate, and when it appeared that the only logical course of action was to fight back. You maintained your generosity. You continued to be patient. You chose compassion over animosity, which would have appeared to be a simple form of self-defense to harden your heart. Those private judgments, quiet moments, and internal decisions that no one else knew or noticed. Heaven didn't ignore them. Every single one was documented, observed, and commended. You went through a spiritual checkpoint with no ceremony, announcement, or celebration. A limit, a point of no return, or a line in the sand. Once you had crossed the line, the adversary could no longer stop your mission. Circumstances could no longer delay it. It could no longer be transferred to another person. It was permanently sealed and secured inside. Heaven did not celebrate loudly when you crossed that invisible line. Heaven did not hold a celebration. In contrast, heaven became serene, tranquil, and respectful. The recent confirmation was significant. It came with a sense of responsibility. It was of eternal significance. This is precisely why your life began to feel strange after the incident. Not worse, understandable, not terrible, just unfamiliar and distinct. The old and new motivations that used to motivate you have abruptly lost their power. The old desires that used to excite you have completely lost their appeal. Old objectives that were once deemed critical have since become obsolete. You began to feel a sense of disconnection, detachment, and separation from things that were once completely natural, normal, and inextricably linked to your identity. There was no confusion. The individual was chosen. You didn't lose your bearings. It was a period of transition. That was a transformation. That was your spirit adjusting, recalibrating, and realigning to a completely new spiritual jurisdiction, a higher level of authority, and a broader domain of operation. You may have assumed that nothing was happening during that time because the situation appeared to be unchanged. The same setting, challenges, problems, unanswered questions, and seemingly impossible situations. However, on a deep spiritual level, something fundamental changed. Your ability to tolerate specific energies has significantly declined. You were suddenly unable to tolerate things you previously could. Your tolerance for nonsense, drama, manipulation, and diversions has completely vanished. Your desire for superficial connections, superficial relationships, and insignificant conversations is completely gone. These were not just personality changes, they were individually chosen. These weren't mood swings or phases. Those were divine indicators and spiritual signals. Markers were sent from heaven to indicate a significant change in your spiritual DNA. When the divine acts in the spiritual realm, heaven always moves first, with earth trailing behind. The tangible manifestation always precedes the spiritual authorization. The delay between the decree and its visible manifestation is not a form of retribution. This is not a divine withholding from you. It is not a test of forbearance designed to frustrate you. Alignment is the term. It is the divine who allows time, creates space, and orchestrates circumstances so that structures, people, and circumstances can rearrange themselves in a way that does not contradict what has already been authorized over your life. They therefore refrain from interfering with the upcoming event. As a result, they refrain from interfering with what has already been communicated. This is why certain doors closed abruptly, with no notice, explanation, or opportunity to defend themselves. What was the reason for certain people leaving your life without providing closure, having a final conversation, or resolving any outstanding issues? Why did plans that appeared to be so certain, firm, and guaranteed fail at the last minute, just when you thought they were about to be realized? The heavens were clearing up any interference. Heaven was removing impediments. Distractions were being removed in heaven. No, it was not due to the item's inherent cruelty. It wasn't because those people were unsavory. Not because those opportunities were incorrect. but because they were no longer in line with your current circumstances, the preparation you were receiving, and the person you were becoming. You did not fail because those things fell apart. You were not shunned after they left. When those doors shut, you were not penalized. You've completed your education. You obtained a higher classification. You were spiritually promoted and graduated. Promotion in the spiritual realm is rarely seen as celebratory in the moment. I'm experiencing feelings of isolation. There is no noise. The sensation is that of weight. It's a sense of isolation because elevation is always accompanied by increased awareness. True spiritual awareness is associated with an increase in consciousness and responsibility. It is accompanied by a burden of responsibility that the vast majority of people refuse to bear. The divine does not elevate chosen individuals solely to ease their suffering, simplify their lives, or provide them with comfort. Comfort is not a consideration in the context of elevation. The goal is to maximize effectiveness. The subject is impact. It refers to positioning oneself in a way that maximizes the effectiveness of their goal. There was a specific moment when heaven observed, the divine recognized, and confirmed that you could be trusted with silence, the absence of answers, the uncertainty of when the wait would end, and the unknown of what lay ahead. That level of confidence is extremely uncommon. Faith of that nature is extremely rare. The majority of people seek revelation before being prepared for it. The majority of people demand responses before they have the maturity to deal with them. However, as the chosen one, you accepted obedience without explanation. Despite being unaware of all the specifics, you responded, yes. So, you continued to move forward without a complete understanding of the situation. Heaven responded with approval precisely because of this. If you are beginning to understand the information I am disclosing here, and if your confusion is dissipating, please subscribe to this channel right away. This ensures that you don't miss any future messages intended for you. Messages created specifically for the season you are currently experiencing. Why were the archangels astounded by the discharge of what was intended for you? What has been released upon you, chosen one? What decision was made about your life? This was not a typical event. It was uncommon. It was not standard practice. Depending on the assignment, vocation, and object being entrusted, heaven issues a decree or the divine releases an authorization at different levels of authority. Certain tasks require the intervention of angels. Certain people require prophetic substantiation from several sources. Some require signs and marvels to accompany them. However, what was discharged on you? What was authorized regarding your existence and future? The situation required something of greater importance, significance, or weight. It required a mandate so profound, powerful, and far-reaching that even archangels who exist in the presence of the divine paused to observe it. They took note. They observed the substance being emitted. Sharing this does not inflate your ego, chosen one. This is not a case of self-importance or arrogance. This is intended to increase your assurance, strengthen your faith, and stabilize your confidence. Because you will stop having doubts once you understand the level of authority invested in the words spoken over you and the significance of the decrees issued. You will cease to inquire. You'll stop questioning whether it was genuine. Without a doubt, you will understand that the events that have been predetermined for your life cannot be reversed, stopped, or terminated by any opposing force. The adversary is aware of the substance that has been released. Blindness is not a feature of darkness. Evil isn't ignorant. The spiritual realm is conscious. Demons are aware of the changes in your life, even if you don't fully comprehend them. This explains why spiritual resistance increased significantly after your period of silence. This is why assaults became more intense, frequent, and strategic at a time when nothing visible changed in your situation. As a result, warfare intensified just when you thought you were on the verge of a breakthrough. The enemy does not invest resources, waste energy, or launch high-level attacks on those who do not have an assignment, pose no threat, or hold legitimate authority. Interference indicates significance. Opposition indicates importance. Opposition will arise to put your resolve to the test, to challenge your commitment, and to determine whether you will hold your ground or retreat when pressure builds, when heaven authorizes the release of something truly powerful and of eternal consequence. However, it is critical that you understand the following, which should be deeply ingrained in your soul. The attacks and conflicts you've encountered aren't meant to slow your progress. They do not intend to destroy you. They do not intend to derail your calling. Their goal is to increase your capabilities, develop you, train you, and prepare you. Every battle, struggle, and opposition you've faced has sharpened your discernment. It taught you how to distinguish between truth and deception. It demonstrated how to distinguish between the divine voice and the whispers of an adversary. Your patience was strengthened by each delay that frustrated you, each closed door that disappointed you, and each no that perplexed you. It improves your endurance. It improved your ability to stand firm when everything around you is trembling, to trust when you can't see, and to believe when you can't see. Every wound you suffered, every betrayal that deeply hurt you, and every abandonment that left you alone increased your compassion for others. It gave you empathy that you could never have gained through any other means. It imbued you with compassion for the wounded because you have been through the agony of being devastated. You are not the same person who embarked on that difficult journey. You're not the same person you were before the testing started. You've been transformed by the fire. The pressure has refined you. You went through what would have broken countless others, destroying many who were less dedicated than you. You remained loyal despite the fact that it would have been perfectly reasonable to abdicate your position, walk away, or resign. And your endurance, perseverance, and refusal to give up have prepared you for what lies ahead. It provided you with the necessary information to navigate the upcoming transition, as well as the implications for your future and assignment. Chosen one, the authority that has been bestowed upon you is not exclusive to you. It is not just about your personal gain or individual blessing. It is intended for a large group of people. It is intended for a large group of people. It is for everyone who will be impacted by your obedience, moved by your faithfulness, and transformed by your willingness to respond to the divine call. Your assignment is significant. It is of great importance. It is linked to others, which explains why it has eternal consequences. Individuals are anticipating your arrival, accepting your position, and assuming the authority that has been bestowed upon you. They aren't even aware they're waiting. They are unaware that their breakthrough is dependent on your obedience. However, it is. This is why you are unable to maintain any skepticism. This is why comparisons are no longer useful. Your trajectory is distinct. Your timing is deliberate. What appears to be a delay is in fact a form of preparation. The sensation of waiting is fundamentally the process of positioning. You are currently between the stages of authorization and manifestation. Additionally, that area is considered sacred. It is protected. It is safeguarded. The divine does not hasten the arrival of a powerful entity released from heaven. Delay can appear to be a form of protection. You were perplexed as to why progress seemed to be invisible, despite your unwavering faith, and why things slowed just when you were ready. Stagnation was not the case. That was an act of concealment. Heaven keeps what is valuable hidden until the environment is safe enough to accept it. Even the sun was hidden for years before its public appearance. And if that level of calling required concealment, how much more so for those chosen to carry out important missions? This is easily understandable. However, some aspects of your personality remain hidden, not due to your unworthiness, but because premature disclosure would result in interference. Heaven is better at determining the proper time than desire. As a result, paradise operated while you waited. The heavens were safe while you inquired. Everything was being organized behind the veil, despite your belief that nothing had changed. Baishi, the chosen one, the spiritual transformation that you failed to notice. You went through a change you were unaware of. Your spiritual perceptions were enhanced. Your discernment has been enhanced. Your ability to discern truth from deception has improved. You started to notice patterns that you had previously overlooked. You became aware of energies before events occurred. You received warnings prior to the occurrence of peril. This wasn't an accident. This was an enhancement. The vessel must be equipped before heaven releases authority. While you thought you were only surviving, you were actually preparing. Each closed door instilled trust in you. With each delayed response, your patience grew stronger. You learned discernment through each traumatic separation. You're no longer the same person. You have an alternative viewpoint. You react differently. You make a different decision. And those closest to you noticed the change, even if they were unable to express it. Certain people commemorated your development. Certain people viewed it as a threat. A few people distanced themselves because they were unable to maintain a connection. This was not a rejection. That represented a realignment. Your next season is not allocated to all individuals. Some were supposed to join you for only a portion of the journey. Their departure did not constitute a betrayal. It was the culmination. Do not force what is no longer, but rather respect what was. Stewardship is your current obligation. Revelation alters responsibility. After understanding the preceding actions, the manner in which you proceed becomes increasingly important. Rushing, proving, and announcing are not acceptable during this season. This is the time to be responsible with the resources that have been entrusted to us. Restraint is the first obligation. It is critical that you resist the urge to speak prematurely. Not everyone is meant to understand what is happening inside of you. Certain people are meant to see the fruit later. Premature explanation encourages interference. Silence protects what is still in the process of development. This is not secrecy caused by dread. Wisdom is the result of discernment. Humility is the next requirement. Authority thrives on low-lying soil. Elevating the ego obscures clarity. It is critical that you exercise caution when it comes to spiritual pride disguised as confidence. Depends on confidence. Pride is comparable. Confidence is attentive. Pride speaks without need. Maintain your composure. Keep a teachable attitude. Your possessions were not acquired. Rather, they were entrusted to you. The channel remains open as a result of gratitude. It is obstructed by entitlements. Discipline is the third obligation. Non-severe discipline. Consistently gentle. Even if you are in good health, keep praying. Read the scripture for alignment rather than for information. Choose routines that promote tranquility over stimulation. It is more important than ever to consider your own internal environment. Patience is the fourth responsibility. You are currently in between the stages of confirmation and manifestation. This is the point at which many people jeopardize their own breakthrough by acting prematurely. Allow the divine to unfold events in a precise order. Timing is not a cause of delay. Time is a safeguard. Have faith in it. Compassion is the fifth responsibility. As you become more aware, you will notice that others are still trapped in the cycles from which you have escaped. Please refrain from making judgments on them. Keep in mind the duration of your procedure. Gently guide. Communicate with benevolence. Control is the result of authority that lacks compassion. It's not your responsibility to correct everyone. The goal is to maintain consistency. Furthermore, it is critical that you develop the ability to relax without guilt. In this season, relaxation is a form of obedience. Excessive exertion will impair your discernment. You do not have to be exhausted by the divine. Clarity comes from rest rather than effort. Pay close attention to the current aspects of your life that are draining you. Conversations that are burdensome. Chaotic environments. Peace-breaking obligations. You are free to make a different choice. Stewardship includes the establishment of boundaries. Obedience without urgency is an extra obligation. You will receive gentle reminders rather than outspoken directives. A feeling of repose. The sensation of waiting. Consideration of redirection. Stick to those discrete instructions. Your sensitivity is being improved. Obedience will become more precise and less dramatic. You may also notice that blessings arrive in a very quiet manner. Unannounced opportunities. Favor without ceremony. Accept them with a sense of humility. It is unnecessary to announce each victory. Additionally, it is imperative to note the following. Refrain from mentally revisiting previous seasons. Please refrain from reliving pain that has already been alleviated. Emotionally, this causes you to retreat. Staying present is a way to honor your personal development. Perfection is not necessary to progress correctly. It necessitates attentiveness. Remain cognizant of your internal state. Pause when tranquility departs. Pray when clarity is obscured. Patience is advised when confusion arises. The divine is not requesting that you resolve all issues. The request is straightforward. Maintain your alignment. If this message has provided you with a clearer understanding of your emotions, please inform me by liking this video and sharing it with someone who requires this information today. The final straw that resurrects an individual on the brink of collapse and guides them back into the light, the calm before visible manifestation, may be your immediate action. Chosen one, exhale deeply and allow your shoulders to relax. What has been done on your behalf has already been resolved. You are no longer perched on the brink of indecision. You are currently situated in the tranquil region where heaven has spoken and earth is still in the process of catching up. Nothing you endured was in vain. Nothing that you carried was disregarded. Every silent prayer, every restrained reaction, and every moment in which you opted for faith over frustration were observed. Additionally, it was addressed as a result of its visibility. Thoroughly, not in a hurry, but without excessive volume. Emptiness is not the sensation of tranquility you are currently experiencing. It is preparedness. It is the state of tranquility that occurs when striving concludes and alignment commences. You are not anticipating authorization. With confirmation, you are walking. No force can reverse what heaven confirms. You should not hasten the process of unfolding. Do not question what has already been sealed. Allow tranquility to guide you. Allow yourself to be protected by patience. Allow humility to serve as a source of stability. What is intended for you will arrive without force, without disorder, and without you losing yourself in the process. Always bear this in mind. The divine does not bring chosen ones to this far to abandon them in silence. Trust is imparted in this environment without the presence of anxiety. You are being prepared for the imminent manifestation of the situation. And when it does, you will require this internal stability more than excitement. Presently, your obligation is to maintain your presence. Continue praying. Maintain a sense of stability. This foundation will be necessary when the manifestation of what heaven has already approved begins. Right now, you are being constructed for that moment. Therefore, proceed with caution. Maintain your loyalty. Have faith in the decisions that heaven has already made. You're not lagging. You are not overlooked. You are exactly where you should be. Additionally, there are alignments that are currently invisible but will be apparent in the near future. If this message resonated with you, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with other selected individuals who require this confirmation. Comment 777 below as a declaration of readiness, peace, and alignment for the release that has already occurred throughout your life. Proceed with caution, chosen one. You are more prepared than you realize as your season is transitioning. We will ascend toward the light.